I made that like really cut through was probably De La Soul, Rock Cocaine Flow. Like when I made that, then people were trying to find me. I had like Busta Rhymes calling me and people like that.
So who's Jake? Little white guy. He made the beats.
Nobody was saying it in a cynical kind of way. They were just like, no, this dude is on point.
I knew you was gonna be filthy because I was like,
No,
you had to.
No, you didn't.
No, my mom, I did.
Being from Seattle, I feel like I have a story or a memory from every block, like in Capitol Hill. I've really been on these streets for 40 years. Coming up in the era I did, it just informed everything that I became and just gave me that foundation with the music and the culture. And I was just fortunate to grow up on a block with like a lot of other kids that were into cool music, early funk and hip hop, whatever the kids that were 5 years old that were into. I was doing it, and that was graffiti, that was breakdancing. I even had neighbors that would put the speaker out the window and just blast whatever their new favorite song was. That's how I heard a lot of things first. It shaped everything about what I became as an artist. And I just loved the energy, you know, it was just so much fun. You know, sometimes I feel like when I'm making music, I'm trying to recapture, somehow get that excitement I had as a little kid, you know, the special feeling it had at that time. Hip hop was just such a rare commodity, and I think it was like real precious to everybody that was involved with it. So I made a beat out of a local Seattle artist named Tony B, Tony Ben. Tony B had a show.
Cube 93, the most popular at the time hip-hop station in the city.
When I hear his voice, I'm like, that's the voice from the radio.
Part of that was dealing with the music community. And
we were never happy with you guys.
So I heard there was this white kid who was making beats. That in itself,
right, exactly,
was rare.
That was rare in that time. It was really shocking to me when Supreme did Weedle's Groove, and he had this song in there by Group Teleclear, and I was like, this song's dope, who is this? He's like, that's Tony B from Cube, and I was like, no way. Then a couple years after that, I found out about this other 45 called Fantasy Love that you did. Probably my top local Seattle funk song.
Wow.
Yeah, you hit it with that one. You knocked that one out the park.
That was an attempt to say, okay, this is what we need to sound like. Nobody liked it. And ironically, that's the song that was on Wheels Groove.
Right.
That they said years later on that, well, you were ahead of your time. I didn't feel like it at the time. I felt like I was making music that nobody liked.
Right. I have noticed the longer I do this, everybody has a time, though.
Yeah.
It's just not always when you want it. So I put my chops in. We got, I don't know, quite a bit. So yeah, I heard that and I thought, man, I could just take the drums out, remove the vocals. I even removed the bass because I wanted to play my own bass. So then we get to this. Every time I'm doing this, I'm looking at records like they're instruments. It's not like we're just gonna steal their music. It's a part of my palette, part of my painting, What makes Serato samples so special is, you could have a sample, you're like, I like the vibe on this, but I don't necessarily want those drums competing with the drums I'm programming or the bass that I want to play. The studio in Everett called Soundview Analog, I did a session there, shout out to Sean, and I was just blown away at how the drums sounded in there. There's a lot of people with vintage studios that don't necessarily know how to dial in the sound I'm looking for. I did another session out there with Benji and his group NSB. Even when I did that session, I thought, I need to just get Benji back here doing breakbeats for me. Like, that needs to happen. How the Barry White drums is always like,
There was hecka hi-hat.
Yeah, a lot of hi-hat. And I thought that sounded great. So from there, had to get that and take the little roll. And yeah, that's we got like kind of a root of a beat basically with that. Putting this in here, it's like it really fits the same, sound palette as the Tony B stuff. It fits right in the kind of beats I like to make. I grabbed another sample from Weedle's Groove, which is a compilation that my boy Supreme LaRock put together. So Supreme put that compilation together because he's just always ahead of the curve when it comes to records. He's like the first older friend I have. So I just tagged around with him all the time.
Right after I met him, I picked him up one day. He said, where are we going? I said, we're going to go to Eastern Washington, or we might go down to Oregon or something. He looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, why would we do that? And I said, we don't know what they have out there. They're going to have different records. He never thought of going to different stores. So the Weedle's Groove record, when Light in the Attic started the label, they wanted to reissue like some cool stuff, and somebody told them, oh, get with Supreme. And I said, I want to do this comp of Seattle Funk 45s. And they looked at me like I was out of my mind, like they weren't interested at all. We ended up doing it. I mentioned doing a doc or a movie. During the process, they ended up doing that. And to this day, they thank me because they said it was their biggest selling record.
He's like that big brother that would like mush you in the face like, oh, yeah, come on, kid. Like, he really took me under his wing, and he started a label, Conception Records, and just some of the early songs I did, they put out. So those are the first things I ever did that were on record. Just that right there. This little progression. So then I pitched it down like 3 so it matched. So let's sync it and let's play the chop. And with this one, I really just wanted the keyboard parts, so I'm going to take out all those. You can see it shrinking down the wave. And then it kind of, gives us that resolving chord to get back to this. As I got this foundation of the beat, I got the drums and the sample. I figure I should just play some Juno stuff over it, starting with the bass. For me, one of the signature things I probably had over the years is the way I play bass lines, which it's not something I really even tried to do. It's just like I just have a feel for a certain kind of style I like. And I would say like the space I'm in now as far as playing bass lines is so informed from being in Tuxedo and doing those kind of tracks. So I feel like I've kind of brought some of that to my hip hop stuff, like stuff I've done for like Larry June or some of these other things. They definitely kind of have more of that than my older beats, I think, did. So another really cool kind of accident that happens when, even if you're making a chop just off something that's just the music you're hearing, you can copy that same sequence and then just try the other instruments and see what you get. I did it with the vocal, and I kind of like the little effect it gave me, so I'm gonna play it with the vocal now. You can see the chops. It's the same chops from before, but it's just the vocal, right? So yeah, it's another little unintended consequence. It's pretty cool. We're kind of not too far from Husky Stadium, so we would hear, when they would score a touchdown, you would hear the siren before it even happened on TV.
They'll hear the siren when the team runs out. They know they'll hear it when the Huskies score.
So we're trying to throw the siren in the beat just to make it extra Seattle.
The sound is part of the stadium.
We will really see if the stems can do some work on this. All right, I'm throwing this shit in there. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're in there, man. That worked. It worked. can't talk about making beats in Seattle without bringing up Vitamin D. He's been with me since day one, you know? I mean, he's a huge part of my beat making journey. First impression of Vitamin D was just seeing a guy in the hallway at Garfield carrying some 1,200 turntables. And that was just like, you know, it was just a big like ding, you know, go off in my head. Like later on that day, his group, Ghetto Children, performed at our assembly. And he was up there scratching. And I'm listening to the beat and I was like, this doesn't really sound like somebody else's beat. I don't recognize the song. So I'm like, dang, he must have made that beat. He would fix my beats a lot early on. He was really good for that. And, you know, we made songs together and then he's engineered a lot of stuff I've done. He mixed my album, White Van Music. He mixed the Freeway album. A lot of various things I've worked on. Even if he didn't necessarily make the beat, he was part of it. My first car was the Oldsmobile Cutlass. I'd make my beats and play them in the car and play them for my friends. And for me, I wanted to just hear my beats loud. That was like the main purpose. I'm using stuff from Seattle, so I pulled the Teleclear joint because I'm like, that's Seattle, you know?
Tony B,
Seattle, that's Seattle funk. And it kind of fits in the kind of stuff I've been sampling, right?
Right.
The ill thing with the stems, you know, a lot of times we're just chopping with just the music part because that's the hardest part to get right.
Right.
You can copy that same thing and then just hit the vocals and it's doing something crazy that you wouldn't even have went for.
And you can just keep the part that don't, sound right, and the part that don't,
yes.
You can just retreat that.
Just bounce them out. Yeah, it's amazing.
A-list.
The limitation isn't really the equipment, it's your brain.
There is no limitation.
Because there's no limitation on what we can do.
It's dope because it's like I always say, the records are the original sample kits. And now with Serato stems, they really, really are. You're getting the master rail, basically.
Right.
Wow.
Like I told you, Fantasy Love was too good, man. I don't want to touch that.
Wow. I'm just tripping, man.
It's got to be weird. I never got to play a beat for somebody actually hear their sample before.
Wow.
I hope I did it justice.
Yes. Man, that's fucking amazing. You know, that is... Can you play it again?
Yeah, of course.